Hi students, it's Mrs. T again, and now we're going to talk about stage 4 of the demographic transition model. I'm going to be touching on stage 3 some here also, and then in another video, probably the last video for week 5 about these topics, I'm going to talk about stage 5, but then talk about like 3, 4, and 5 together because that's what your project 2 is going to be about, a little bit of research about countries that are maybe in stage 3, stage 4, or potentially stage 5 these days that we're living in today. So, okay, I gave you a historical perspective of stage 3 in the last video that we had together. However, there are countries in the world today that are in stage 3 of demographic transition. If you will remember, I think it was last week we talked about population density, physiological density, agricultural density, and those numbers give us a lot of information about not only the amount of arable land and whether a country can be self-sustaining as far as food production for itself, but also how much technology or development is available in a society. Today, this day and age, when we find countries that are in stage 3 of demographic transition, and we do find countries that are in stage 3, it's primarily because of the degree of technological advancement, the availability of developed or industrialization in society, developed items or developed economy or industrialization in a society. So stage 3 is not simply a historic stage of development on the demographic transition model. I think I might have led you to believe that. I'm sure that it was misleading in my other video that it's only a historic kind of transition. I was, I guess, focused on Western culture a whole lot when I was outlining this for you and talking about like the transition when Western culture and developed, modern day developed or industrialized nations went through stage 3 and are in stage 4 now, whereas not all countries in the world are in stage 4. When we do project 2, you're going to be investigating stage 3, stage 4, and potentially you're going to predict whether you think there are countries in stage 5 of the demographic transition model or not, because it's debatable. You will be doing some research and you will see online that some people say, yes, we are, or some countries are in stage 5, and here's some examples, and then they like outline what are the characteristics of stage 5 and try to prove it by showing characteristics of that country. So it will be your job to highlight a stage 3 country of your choice, stage 4 country of your choice, and predict whether stage 5 is actually happening and observable in time today, and do that country, highlight that country also. So, yes, so stage 4 is the demographic transition stage that countries that we consider developed or high income or industrialized, all of those different classifications for countries that are used through political science and sociology and cultural geography. Developed nations are in stage 4. That's where population stabilizes, birth rates and death rates are pretty even, and you see that the total population levels out as far as the number of people. There's not a huge increase. So even though there is a swoop up here, you see it level out, and certainly as it transitions into stage 5, you see that more of a level playing field. Okay, so this birth and death rate crossover here that you see on this demographic transition model, this pretty much give and take back and forth stabilizes this population growth. And it's also indicative of this generalized population pyramid down here, where you see it fatter in the middle or even straight up and down in some cases. You see a lot of elderly people alive and pretty much an even number of young people being produced to replace them. So like the natural replacement rate or the natural increase rate, which is represented by the space between these two lines, pretty much evens out. So instead of just drawing that in a linear fashion here, we draw it, and this is conceptual, we draw it, of course, to show that there's ups and downs. Perhaps if the death rate increases the birth rate for a while, maybe that was a significant period of war, maybe that was a significant period like the Spanish flu or something that killed a lot of people. You know, so here's, that's why these birth and death rates are, you know, kind of interchanging with each other here. So we've got diseases under control. In the Industrial Revolution, when we had a whole lot more diversity of jobs and labor force, it freed up a lot of people to start doing scientific inquiry also, and therefore there were some advances on health, nutrition, disease control. Certainly in industrialized nations, developed nations, high-income nations, whichever one of those classifications you want to use, we've got sanitation problems that I mentioned last time taken care of for the most part. We've got safe drinking water available for the most part to the entire population. We've got medical care and health care available, not just for the physical well-being, but for mental well-being also. We've got those systems in place. And so today, when we hear our political system, for instance, talking about universal health care or you know, access to mental health care for all and that kind of thing, these are first world, we call them in geography, first world problems. We have such a developed medical field in an industrialized nation such as the United States. We don't even focus on true health care issues in the medical field. We have things like plastic surgeons that we put that under the umbrella of medicine in order to, I guess, for the training and for confidence, you know, in that medical professional. But these kind of elective surgeries, these kinds of luxury type surgeries that aren't even necessary for the healthcare field, we've got these kinds of things, braces for teeth and stuff like that, you know, orthodontics. That kind of stuff is not really, only in certain circumstances is it necessary to digest food properly, you know, to have the occlusion correct and that kind of thing. But so in other words, in stage 4, for countries that are in stage 4, it's highly industrialized, and you've got such a wide range of jobs that are available, and a low population increase. Pretty much a give and take with seniors versus infants being, you know, dying and being produced in a society, that you've got a pretty stable life. The total fertility rate, like we went over in a recent video, that total fertility rate is the number of children per female of childbearing age. In industrialized nations, in developed nations, that averages out to about 2 per childbearing woman. So if you've heard of the typical, look at my air quotes, typical or nuclear family in society, where you have 2 adults taking care of children that they've produced, so that average number in the United States fluctuates, meaning goes back and forth, from like 1.8 to 3.2 on average. So that's an average of all of the childbearing women in the world and how many children are actually being born compared to the number of women who's possible to have those. And we come up with that 0.2, you know, 3.2 children, because it's an average of all of those childbearing year households out there. So in stage 4, which the United States is, and I hope that you will choose another country other than the United States when you are picking your countries to highlight in Project 2. And there'll be instructions about that. I'm going to steer you away from looking at our own country and look at something else. Stage 4 is what we in the United States are definitely in. We have a lot of social problems in stage 4. Things like gender inequality, we do not like it at all. The wage gap, for instance, is a first world problem. We don't like healthcare not being available to all, but that's again a first world problem. In other nations that are undeveloped or developing, healthcare or even proper sanitation is not even available for people to keep healthy, just to not have diarrhea, for instance, which is a very deadly symptom of many different diseases that are born or transmitted through the water supply. So in a future video, I'm going to show you some urbanized areas that really don't necessarily have adequate sanitation, and how diseases that you and I can easily get over by popping over to Walgreens and buying a box of Imodium or something. These diseases in some cases are deadly in other parts of the world because the water supply does not provide citizens with safe conditions. So they can't even wash their clothes or wash their dishes, or definitely not drink what comes out of their faucet, if they even have a faucet. It might be a well, but the ground is contaminated, and these kinds of things. So stage 4 is what we are in. It's highly industrialized, or even post-industrialization. We have highly industrialized agriculture, like huge machines like tractors and cotton pickers and combines and all this kind of stuff that can work through hundreds of thousands of acres in a day. Big processing plants. We've even got a big factory. It's more like a laboratory over in Memphis right now. I can't remember the name of it. Some of you culinary students probably have heard about the concept of cultured meat. There's something you can look up and maybe post in our discussion board in week 5's folder. Cultured meat is this new post-industrialized agriculture movement where you can take like just a few cells from a chicken breast, like a real chicken breast, take just a few cells and you can clone them and clone them and clone them and clone them, and all of a sudden you've got like a chicken breast looking thing, but there's never been a chicken it was ever attached to. So look that up and research that. This is some of the food supply stuff that Thomas Malthus never anticipated. We've also got genetically modified foods that can grow, in shorter, with shorter growing seasons, or they have higher sugar content. Some of the things that used to be foods aren't even grown for food anymore, like corn is grown for ethanol and stuff like that. So in stage 4, you see a huge transition away from even farmland being used for food supply, and sometimes it's used for energy sources and stuff like that. More and more and more energy that first world nations want to use and demand. We like our air conditioning, we like our heat, we like our gasoline to get us from point A to point B, or we want to have charging stations for our Teslas if that's going to be what's on the road in the future. We've got a whole bunch of innovations happening in stage 4 countries, and that is a good thing on some fronts, and others can cite problems such as climate change that are perhaps unintentional consequences of the Industrial Revolution, and definitely evident in stage 4 of demographic transition, where countries are focusing on carbon footprints, and countries in stage 3 of the demographic transition cannot focus on carbon footprints because they don't even have clean drinking water so that their population can live to this over 65-year-old range on this demographic transition chart that I've got here behind me. Okay, so again, there'll be at least one more video where we talk about stage 5 just a tad, and I'll bring stage 3, 4, and 5 together in that video, and that should round us out for this particular week in geography class. See you next time.